You're listening to the IWD406 Podcast with your host, Julie Walls, where we celebrate, empower, and connect women across Montana and beyond. Join us as we share inspiring stories, valuable insights, and the voices of remarkable women making a difference in their communities.
Today's guest is Brianne Rogers, a powerhouse in Montana's policy, communications, and strategy world. With over 20 years of experience, she's held leadership roles in both D.C. and Montana, serving under Senators Max Baucus and John Walsh before launching her consulting firm, Bird Dog Strategies. Brianne is known for her ability to navigate crisis communications, grow brands, and build lasting relationships. She's chaired Montana's Board of Regents, co-produced major national and international events, and played a key role in Montana's behavioral health initiatives and hardships. When she's not guiding waterfowl hunts in Alaska, she's exploring the outdoors near her home in Bozeman, Montana, with her loyal Labrador, Fox. Welcome to the podcast, Brianne.
Thank you so much for having me, Julie.
What a fun introduction. I love it. There's so much to explore with do you ever just sit back and even on your website and going through your biography, do you ever sit back and think in reflection, not only just gratitude for the immense amount of experiences you had, but the types of experiences?
Yeah, certainly. And also being able to do them from Montana and not have to move away from home, which is really lucky.
Really cool. And speaking of, okay, so my first question is, since the cat's out of the bag, you're from Montana. You're not a transplant. Are you a generational Montanan?
Yes, I was born and raised here in Montana. My parents were from Washington State primarily, but moved out here when my dad was in the public health service back in the 70s instead of going to Vietnam. And they fell in love with Montana. I was so fortunate that they decided to set up shop in Bozeman before I was born.
So they moved before you were born. So you were the first generation Montanan.
Yep.
That's pretty stinking cool.
Yeah.
So your dad, he worked in public health service. What did he do?
Yes. So he was in medical school, and during Vietnam, as I understand it, you would either get drafted into the service or you could do your service through public health service. And so he was a physician on the Crow Indian Reservation in Southeast Montana.
Wow. Did he ever talk about that experience?
Oh, yes. He has many incredible stories.
What was something that kind of stuck out to you?
He was also raised in a great hunting tradition. His father was a big hunter, and his father was actually a shipbuilder. And one of the ways that they really got by was by harvesting wild game. And so my dad came up in a hunting tradition. And then when he moved to the Crow Indian Reservation, he was very fortunate that during his time out there, a number of the tribal community would invite him to go hunting. And so he had a lot of fun hunting, some big game, but mostly upland birds.
That's really cool. Just a side note, my husband and I, we had the great experience of going to New Mexico and being on an Apache reservation. And they took my husband out and his dad for elk hunting. And he had to remove his shoes. I thought that was really cool.
Interesting.
Like a traditional hunt.
Yeah.
And I think those experiences are, life-changing for some people, but definitely a core memory, which is really cool that he shared that with you.
Yes. Yeah. And it was really interesting. My mom and dad actually lived there together. They had just gotten married. They were newlyweds, and there are a lot of other public health workers in the community. And so it was an interesting dynamic between working in the schools, which my mom did as a speech pathologist and a speech therapist, and my dad as a physician at the local hospital, where, especially down there weren't a lot of physicians. So you did everything under the sun, from OB to urgent care to emergency care and everything else.
So let me back up a little bit. So your mom, was she a stay-at-home mom, or she was a speech pathologist in the schools while you were growing up?
Yeah, she went to school for speech pathology. She never practiced it in a very official sense because she gave up her career to raise us as kids.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Oh, wow. That's wonderful. What a great experience.
Yeah.
So then what part of the state did you actually grow up in?
Yeah. So my folks moved to Bozeman in the 70s before I was born in the 80s.
Wow, that's awesome. Bozeman's such a cool state or cool area. And the growth, I'm sure you've just seen a tremendous amount of growth over the years.
Yes. Yeah. The town, I think, has officially doubled in population since I was born here. So lots of big changes, but still lots of good heart.
Yes, let's talk about that. So growing up in Bozeman and when you were in high school, did you have an idea where you wanted to go to college and what you wanted to do? Were you more like me where you're like, I'll figure it out eventually?
Certainly raised in a very achievement driven household. I got a 4.0. I was top of my class. I was in the honor society. I had all these things worked out. I certainly was on the track to have a 4-year college degree. I knew that, but I didn't have as much direction as far as where I would go to school or what I would be going to school in. I ended up starting out in pre-med, I think really inspired by my dad's practice as a private practice physician in Bozeman. But in looking for a college, I think the only thing that I knew is that I wanted to get out of Montana because I had been in Montana my whole life. And of course, the world has to be so much better than Montana. And I do feel fortunate that I did get to get out of the state because it really helped me to understand how special of a place this state is.
Yeah. Where did you go?
I ended up going to Notre Dame in Indiana.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah. It was an incredible education, very different cultural environment than what I had been raised in. Really unique types of people there and some just exceptional professors that really helped me to think outside of the box that I had been born and raised in.
Absolutely. It is totally different. Yeah.
Yes.
And I don't want to hear your thoughts. What's different about it? Midwestern versus the Northwest. Talk to me a little. I'm a Midwestern girl. So I like to hear the perspective from somebody that's not from the Midwest. What were some of the things that stuck out to you?
Yeah, it was such an odd thing because as I've got my partner now is from the Midwest and they're like perhaps the kindest, least judgmental people I've ever met. But my experience at the school, I think it's a higher income bracket student in general. And the judgment was pretty intense. It was a very unique cultural environment. It took me a while to find my people and find my space. I think the biggest thing is that it was very flat and I would go and try to ski and it was just like a ski hill down into a hole instead of a mountain and
It's pretty bad.
Yeah,
It's pretty bad.
But like a lot of people at those outdoor activities. Right. So helped me to appreciate what I had come from.
Were you a sports person? Because the sports for Notre Dame, it's unreal.
You know, it's so funny. My dad is not a big football watcher. So none of us grew up watching sports. We all certainly played sports. I was in basketball, did track and field. I was in the throwing sports, javelin and shot put. But so I played some intramural basketball at Notre Dame, but I didn't even really know what a big deal that Notre Dame football was, but I quickly learned.
It's so cool. I wish I would have been able to go to a game there. I had friends that went off to college to Notre Dame and absolutely loved it, never came back. They went off and did other things. And you're right, that economic piece comes into play because it's a really expensive school. It's not cheap to go there. And you must have had really good grades or your family was able to afford out of state's tuition. And looking ahead now, I know for myself and my kids, it's not affordable for us. I'm just saying, unless your kids are able to get some scholarships and things like that. But back in the 90s, wow, it was still pretty high. It was an expensive school to go to. And I can see where you're going with, I always felt like more of the privileged kids get to go there or the ones that were very highly driven and focused in academia and knew what they were going to become a doctor, whatever that looks like to help that next stage.
I think the standards of admission, I don't know that I was just back there for a 20-year reunion this spring.
Yeah.
And I was talking with my friends where we're like, I don't even know that we would get in anymore because the standards for admission are so high and all the extracurriculars that you have to have. It's very competitive. It is incredibly expensive. And yeah, it's a wild place and a great opportunity. I think the other thing that is unique about it is the Catholic background of it. I think in my class, it was like 91% of my classmates had been in single sex K-12 Catholic education. So it's just like a really different social environment than the
Oh, yeah.
incredible public K-12 school system that we have here in the state of Montana, which I thought prepared me very well for my education. There was a lot of students in my class who had to take remedial math or remedial English, even having gotten into Notre Dame. So I thought that the Montana K-12 public school system prepared me well, which I thought was impressive, given that all of these classmates of mine have been paying top dollar for private education leading up to Notre Dame as well.
That's a very interesting point. I love what you just said. That's interesting. Because I think, and we'll get into it, but I'm seeing some foreshadowing because eventually you were appointed on as a chairperson on the Board of Regents, which I thought is really fascinating. So it comes back. You probably had a lot of flashbacks while you were sitting in that position, but we can get into that. But I love what you said, because I really do believe the educational system and the public school systems here are pretty fantastic.
Yes.
The support from the teachers to parent involvement, I think they've done an excellent job in this state, helping support rural kids go beyond. And then I look at the junior colleges and how easy it is for these kids to go to school with very minimal financial cost.
Yes. Yeah. The efforts to keep tuition low for in-state students and price the entire system for the purpose of increasing access for Montana students it's a lot of work, and there's a lot of folks that have been dedicated to it for decades to maintain that.
And you certainly seem very grateful for your experience. You certainly seem like that was a real big opportunity for you to leave Montana, go to Notre Dame, have this amazing experience, and then take it back eventually to our state and learn from that, which I think is pretty phenomenal, Brianne, because I think your experiences is all about service, helping your communities. So I want to go into your next step of life. From Notre Dame, after you graduated, were you planning on going to med school?
First year at Notre Dame, I started out pre-med. I walk into my first chemistry class, and in that one chemistry class, they covered the entire year of high school chemistry that I had had. And I ultimately completed that year of chemistry, but I think I got my first B. And so I was like, oh, I can't be a doctor.
Oh, no. Okay, got you. Okay.
But during that first freshman year, I had taken a Anthropology 101 course that really had sparked a lot of interest for me. And that's actually the direction that I took. So I went on to be an anthropology major. I stacked on a double major in philosophy, and then I also had a minor in Italian. But I was just so fortunate to have these incredible professors that had traveled all over the world, studied different primates, different cultures, had really gone deep into philosophical studies and research. And it was a really fun environment to just think deeply and really analyze all of my beliefs and what I thought of the world and why I thought of the world the way that I did, and all within the context of this Catholic environment. It was a super unique opportunity for me to really figure out who I was.
Yeah. And to have that space to be able to do that, right? Because I know sometimes we're stuck into our own environments, and to be able to, and not to say that's not the case in all of Montana, but we do have some stuckness, I will say, in certain aspects. But I love the fact, have you always been a deep thinker?
Oh, I think my folks would probably say I was a little bit of an old soul as a kid as well.
And obviously there's some revelations that come about when you get that sacred space of somebody allowing you to have these deeper conversations, analyze whether or not, what your belief systems are. Is it still the same from then and now? Obviously you come from Montana, you're now thinking deeply, you're starting to have these really heartfelt conversations about things that you've questioned. And then did you start to feel like your belief system was shifting, and then has it evolved from that since? And that's a complicated question.
Yes. So certainly the college evolution was choir was really central to my social network there. A lot of my friends were in the LGBTQ community, which Notre Dame is a very conservative cultural environment. And so many of my friends were also Catholic, and so they were really struggling with their identity and the church's lack of acceptance, especially at that time before Pope Francis, of them being involved in the church. So I think that was really hard for me to justify, like, this belief system that I was a part of that wasn't supporting people who were very good people that were trying to be in that belief system as well. So that was a big wake up call for me. And then I think beyond that, every day of my life, I'm learning and reanalyzing my beliefs. I think in college, a lot more things felt black and white, like good and bad, right and wrong. And I think the older I get, the more there's a lot of shades of gray, and it's fun to talk to folks and find the common values in the middle.
Which, okay, again, leads me into your next state of choice and profession, which obviously you're right. Coming from a religious institution and then a reinforcement from a university, it's a lot of black and white. And then you roll into your next phase, which was the opportunity to work for Senator Baucus, correct?
Yep.
Was that
Yep.
an internship?
Yeah, so it was a fellowship. So it was the Sean Michael Niles Fellowship.
Yeah.
Sean Niles was an incredible individual from Bozeman. He had been valedictorian of his Bozeman High class 4 years previously, and unfortunately died in a total freak car accident after his first year at Princeton. He could have gone on to be the president of the world. He was such an incredible guy. So Max set up a fellowship in his name to support work in Native American and public lands and natural resource legislative topics.
Got you. Okay, interesting. So this is exciting. So did you go straight from the university, from Notre Dame to Washington, D.C.?
Yep, packed up my Toyota Camry and drove on over to Washington, D.C. Found actually a Notre Dame roommate. She was a pre-med. She was going to Georgetown for her medical school, and we found an apartment up in Northwest D.C. and took a bus to a metro and a walk to work every day, and was a big city girl.
Wow, what an interesting experience. But did you have any reservations, or were you just completely open-minded? Let's do this. Ready to learn.
I think it was just a great opportunity. And so I was going to do everything I could to make the most of that opportunity. And as a fellow, you're certainly going to have certain things within your purview. And then you're also trying to impress the folks who are decision makers in the office to see if you can stick around. The fellowship was only a 3-month opportunity. So I think I was trying to find a long opportunity out of that fellowship. Any extra work I could do, filing things, helping the office. We had this incredible office manager, so would just do anything that she asked of me, and it was a fun time in my life to really just do everything that I could to increase my value to the office.
That's really cool. So starting out, you're doing a lot of errands. You're kind of like the office girl. And then that 3-month stint ended. And then did they end up, because you're so tenacious and willing to learn and grasp and do things that maybe are out of your comfort wheel, then did they offer you a longer term or longer opportunity? Okay, talk to me about that.
Yeah, so it was like a lot of different progressions. So I was luckily a front desk spot open. So I was the person that answered the phone whenever you call a senator in DC and greeted guests that came in to visit with the senator, either Montanans that were in DC to see him or CEOs and other interests that wanted to talk to the senator about legislation. And then I was hired on by the U.S. Senate Finance Committee as a press assistant. So got some skills built in the press world under a great communications director over there. The U.S. Senate Finance Committee oversees tax, trade, and health policy, as well as like Social Security, pensions. So I got to talk with staff members who were just experts on all of these topics under the sun to write press releases and really understand complex legislative topics. And it was a great opportunity to really deep dive on a huge scope of information to set the pace for my information vacuuming for the rest of my life, where I'm always trying to stay on top of not only legislative topics, but just general news and everything else. And it was a fun start to that. And then Max needed a scheduler, so I was able to move into the administrative core team right outside of his office, close relationships with our chief of staff and other top staff members. And as much as being a scheduler wasn't something that I envisioned for my life, it was actually an incredible opportunity. Our chief of staff at the time was Jim Messina, who's gone on to be an incredible political strategist and taught us a lot about leadership and had a lot of big ideas even as a very young person back then. So just being right outside the door and being a part of some really big decisions for the senator, I think taught me a lot about not only what really goes on in political strategy to make big decisions, but also just exposed me to a lot of different people and expertise that I've been able to carry on through the rest of my career.
Yes. That's really amazing. One of once in a lifetime opportunity for somebody in their early 20s.
Some little kid from Montana. It's such a great bonus. I think our delegation continues to do this where you're really trying to hire Montana kids to staff that office because they really understand Montana issues better than folks from outside of the state. But
Yeah, and not only that, but I look, go ahead. Sorry, say that again.
I was gonna say, like, DC is all about who you know, not like what you've done to get there. So it's like you
Right.
have to have an in to get in an office. And so having a senator that's willing to hire Montana kids that otherwise don't have connections to DC was the reason that so many of me and my colleagues have had great careers is because of Max's willingness to hire Montanans.
Did he ever give you any personal insight on how to succeed? Did he give you any like suggestions or words of encouragement?
Oh boy, yes, there are so many incredible lessons that Max taught us over the years. He had all these little sayings and things that he was there. One was 3-step process. Do it right the first time, make it fun, and do it now. And as much as all of us bemoaned it as staff back in the day, it's something that I still think about and practice in my everyday life. He had so many, and he was very dedicated to staying in touch with constituents in a very personal way. So he would do these things called gold notes where he met somebody at a gas station and he'd send us a little note. We'd figure out who the person was so he could actually handwrite them a little personal note saying it was great to meet you at the town pump in Butte. Please stay in contact if there's anything I can do for you. But it's like those types of personal touches and his willingness to engage with people in real time where they were and his willingness to be out in the public, I think really helped him to stay connected to the issues that matter to Montanans. And we still, strategies that I use in my own life, people still love getting a handwritten card in the mail. Max is full of great Maxisms, we would call them.
Isn't that amazing? I just had a conversation the other day with somebody about this. And I don't want to go down this topic in depth. We can, but I think COVID, the lack of connection, social media has taken away that real fine, intricate element of personal connection. And I've even seen that with women in business. And I think of some of the mentors that I've interviewed and mentors that I have in my own life. They talk about promptness is key. Making sure you respond within a certain period of time, not just having email conversations, but scheduling time to really meet with somebody, sit down with them and have a conversation, connect with them eye to eye. Those are so important. I want to hear your thoughts on this. Have you seen over the years that piece has gone to the wayside a little bit? What he's instilled in you, those core memories that you just shared with me about what it means something when you connect with somebody, remember their names, send them a thank you note, share gratitude. I feel that's a big part of why oftentimes women struggle in business, in communications, in relationships. Have you seen that? And what's your thoughts?
I have seen that. I think it's also a generational thing. Even going and knocking on doors and asking people for their vote, it's a personal thing to do. And I think a lot of, especially rural Montanans, really appreciate it. And I also find it when I'm up in Canada looking for access on property, people's willingness to talk to you if you come and knock on their door. I think we have lost a lot of connection. I think just like sitting down as a family and having dinner and having the discussion of the day, and it's gone by the wayside. I think there's a lot of basic pieces of connection in our society that I agree that COVID had a big piece of, but then also like the development of technology, like folks don't even want to talk on the phone anymore. They just want a text message. I do think that there's a lot of loss of connectivity there, but I am seeing little highlights of, especially younger generations, hitting back against that. And I think we just need to keep trying to stay connected. I don't know that there's any big solution besides just one person at a time putting attention into it.
And one of the things I noticed on another point of during the political season, this last election, I absolutely love the door-to-door conversations where people were going around knocking on doors. Hey, who are you voting for? Let's talk. I would sit on the stoop of my house for 20 to 30 minutes having these conversations. And it didn't matter which political party they came from. It was wonderful. And I missed that. I hadn't seen that in years. Does Montana, and I'm just, because I'm from the Midwest, and maybe it's not something I've ever seen probably in my entire lifetime. Is that something that's done here every election season? Or do you think this last election was a big part of going door to door and knocking on the doors?
No, and actually there was some ground game here, but there wasn't like a huge, like the Obama election was like
Yes.
massive national ground game was brought in. But the whole heritage is Max. So Max has these iconic walks across the state. So for one campaign, he walked east to west. One campaign, he walked north to south. The whole way, knocking on doors, shaking hands, waving at people as they drove by on the highway. I think during the COVID period especially, there was more restrictions on actually having face-to-face interactions. And so that's finally rebuilding now.
Yeah. And you worked for him before the COVID period back 2014 and before, right?
Yeah, I was like early aughts to about 2014.
And then he retired, right, in 2014?
So he was appointed by President Obama to be ambassador to China.
That's right. So that position shifted. And then what did you end up doing?
And so at the way that Montana's system is set up is if a U.S. senator leaves their position, the governor of the state can appoint someone to fill the position until the next election. So John Walsh, who is lieutenant governor at the time, was appointed to fill Max's role. Incredible man. He was like the former adjutant general of the National Guard in Montana, had served many tours in Iraq. Just an incredible human being. And I was fortunate to work for him for a year trying to maintain Max's seat. Unfortunately, we did not succeed, but he taught me a lot of lessons. He was a very different principal than I had ever worked for, and a man with a great pride and honor. Very interesting person to work for.
Very interesting. Okay, I want to back up a little bit. Before you started working for him, you ran in 2011 a really large event. So the Asia Pacific Economic, was it like a summit?
Yeah. So APEC, the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, is
there you go.
a regional economic forum that 21 different economies come together usually 3 times a year in one of those economies. So 2011 was a year when all the meetings were in the US, and never has an APEC meeting been hosted in somewhere as remote and rural as Montana. But of course, as chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, Max was able to convince the US Trade Representative and other powers that be that Montana could do a great job of hosting this very important economic forum. And he was also able to get, especially the Big Sky Resort under Taylor Middleton, but also the Big Sky community in general, on board to be able to support an event of this magnitude. It also meant working with the Gallatin Sheriff's Office to make sure that public safety and all this infrastructure could be brought in to support this level of not only the size of the event, but also the level of diplomatic engagement that was required from a safety and health and perspective. So it was quite the event, and there was folks from all over the world that were in Montana. Many of them, even, I think it was in the spring, but it snowed, and many of them seeing snow for the first time. So it was pretty fun.
Okay, was that your first big event that you curated?
No, we were so fortunate. Max did big events all the time. So he'd do economic development summits all the time. We had health summits, and he would do a great job of bringing in like CEOs of big corporations or big nonprofits to like headline a larger discussion that was based on what was the prevailing legislative topic at the time. So we had the great opportunity to host a number of different summits, given Max's influence and his ability to, again, because he was the chairman of the U.S. Senate Finance Committee with purview over tax, trade, and health policy. The CEO of every major corporation in America wanted to meet with him if it was like about a regulation or a tax break or something that they needed. He would always take time at the end of each of those meetings to ask for a favor, either come and invest in Montana or come and actually see Montana. And so he would use and leverage all of those relationships to bring home a lot of value to the state and bring home new connections for business owners here to leverage.
That's really fascinating. And I love that we're capturing that information because that's a big piece of it. And was that, I know you've done a lot and now currently you've done a lot with helping people like Red Ants Pants Festival bring these big events to Montana. I've seen women here struggle, and I'm just going to share this on curating events, getting full attendance, things like that. And I think there are some real pieces that people are wanting to learn how to curate an event. How do I make a successful event happen here in Montana? There's a lot of factors on competition, and then we have small business, high density population. And there's a lot of factors that can really hinder a person who's putting all their time and resources into creating something amazing. And then they end up only getting maybe 25% or 50% attendance. Now, somebody like you that has had this amazing amount of experiences, what do you think are some of the key pieces that people need to take into consideration when running an event or putting up an event together?
I think it's two big things. So number one is the principles. So like having super incredible keynote speakers or headlining musicians or some big draw that's going to catch someone's eye and make them think, oh, this might be worth my time. And then the partnership piece. And that's on multiple levels, obviously, with whatever community you're hosting the event in, especially if it's a smaller town, not just coming in and saying, I'm doing this, but coming in, and Sarah Calhoun from White Silver Springs and Red Ants Pants could write a novel on this topic of coming to a small town and putting in the time and effort to help to build trust in order to get everybody on board with a bigger vision that otherwise I don't think anyone could really succeed in doing as an outsider. Number one, building trust with the community and making sure that they're on board and understanding the vision and how it's going to benefit the community as a whole. Because no matter how much you try to contain the chaos, it's going to spill over. And so you want your liquor store and hotels and businesses and everybody else to be on board to be able to support the event. And number two, making sure that you have some sort of third-party validators, if it's a university or an economic development entity or some other entity that's saying this is a worthwhile event or this is a worthwhile conference or it has a good mission behind it. It always helps to have trusted sources helping you to promote it as a sponsor or as a third-party validator, quotes, something like that.
Yeah, and I want to ask you, is this something that is this something that you learned through just experiences?
Yes, that is me. Everything I have basically learned through learning it myself, learning and watching others and learning from others, and just being curious about the world and taking things apart and seeing what makes them tick and trying to put them together in a way that makes sense for the unique project that I'm working on.
And it's fascinating because I would think you've had to build some of these events up. I don't think you started with a 2,500 person event. It had to start with the smaller events and then taking on a little bit of a back seat role, moving into more of a front seat role, and then managing overall these bigger events. I have to ask you, you've done some really big ones, 2,500, 4,000, 10,000. That's a lot of people to manage. And you have been at the helm of it, right? Not the back seat. What do you, that would be overwhelming for me. Do you get overwhelmed by that? Or do you just systematically have a formulation that you put in play and say, this is how we're going to do it?
I think each one's a little different. I think, again, they're all reflecting the big economic development summit couldn't have happened without Montana Tech and the community of Butte supporting it. The Apex Summit could not have happened without the Big Sky Resort and the community of Big Sky in their shoulder season, having restaurants still be open, people taking a risk. We were saying people are coming in, they're going to believe us and staff up to be a part of it. The Red Ants Pants Music Festival, Sarah spending a decade building up trust in that community in order to deliver this very large event. And then also for all of these, having this huge team behind you. So none of it happens without the team that's actually supporting the event Sarah's an incredible job. We call ourselves the colony at the Red Ants Pants Music Festival of just all of these incredible folks from all over the country, even Canada, a bunch of her cousins that come down, and high quality, high productivity, high intention individuals that gather together for a communal purpose of raising it up. Same thing with a lot of Max's events. There's a huge network of Baucus family staff members that are current, past, former, that would bring their unique gifts and talents and support to elevate the opportunities as well.
Pretty remarkable. That when you sit back and think about it, to be able to bring that many people together for a shared vision, that's a lot of conversations. And I like what you said is building that trust in the community because you're bringing something unique and new here. I'm going to push back a little bit. Montana has pushed back on uniqueness and new things and looking at bringing a big economic summit here. I can't even imagine. I'm sure you dealt with some pushback. How do you deal with that?
I think that the pushback was limited to a certain extent because Max had proven that if he's going to invest his time and effort in producing something, it's going to be worthwhile for the attendees. We're going to do matchmaking. We're going to make sure that folks can actually meet with these federal agencies or private businesses that are coming in and seeing if their products work for them and getting an opportunity to pitch Montana services to national entities. It's so much more than that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's hard. We'd have to have a whole segment on dissecting event building and what it takes to make a successful event and how if you're coming into a rural area, you've got Farmer Joe on the corner that likes to be able to drive from his house to the market and not have to go through a brigade of cars. And I think what you hit the point on was Montana's like trust. They really do to know, what you're doing, why you're here. The Red Ants Pants Festival, what is this going to do for the rest of us that lives here? I know for the Whitefish or the Under the Big Sky here, it really does. Our first year moving here, I thought to myself, what did we move into? And just the hype around even the infrastructure around the festival and how the people were coming to and from. And my road was like a highway and it's just a little tiny neighborhood road, but it's a pass through and the neighbors would be upset about it. And everybody is just, the festival's coming, even though it brings so much money and it brings so much opportunity to the area. And you bring in people for tourism and all of a sudden they're signing up for a rafting adventure during that week of the festival. I think it's hard for some folks that have been living in peace and quiet for some time. And all of a sudden there's disruption. So I really like what you said. It does take time to build that trust and to basically sell them on why this is a good idea.
Yeah. And part of that two-prong, like having a big headliner and having good partners, that like health and safety piece. So for the festival, we have a comprehensive countywide meeting with fire, EMS, hospital, security, county commissioners, city leadership. Yeah, and same thing with the economic development summits and things we did with Max. It's like you have to have all your partners on the table. You have to think about all the worst case scenarios. We have to do active shooter drills, lightning strike drill. You have to have everything thought through and you have to help 15,000 folks out in the cow pasture who are just wanting to party and have a good time think thoughtfully about like heat and water stroke, like heat stroke and water consumption and hydration and lightning and bug bites and gopher holes. There's so many different things, but I will say that's another big key of a successful event is starting with safety first. I just am a worst case scenario type of person. I live in a world where if I can think through all the worst case things and plan for them, I feel safer and more confident going forward that I can answer people's questions and address their concerns. And I think that's one thing that really worked well for me with Sarah. With the Red Ants Pants Music Festival, she already had that culture of safety built into her staff leadership as well. A lot of former firefighters, a lot of people with experience in the Forest Service, with command structure management, those types of things, especially for these big scale events. If you don't have that foundation, not only do you really have a lot more risk than I would be comfortable with, but you might not be able to get insured.
That's interesting. That's a good point. I want to go back a little bit from working with Senator Baucus to Senator Walsh. Now, his term ended in it's going to kill me, 2015, right?
Yeah. So the election was in 2014, so January of 2015.
2015. So then at that point, you had to pivot. Was that when you started to, from all this accumulation of experience, were you like, okay, maybe I should start my own company? Was that when you decided to pivot towards starting your own company called Bird Dog Strategies?
Yeah, I think what I've noticed as a pattern in my career choices is I'm really attracted to these strong principles. And for 10 years, I was working with Max and we were very close. I was his scheduler, I was his state director. So we would travel the state 4 to 7 days a week. And we had a lot of time together. And I still believe in Max. I think he's a great public servant. I think that he had his heart in the right place. He had a sign on his desk that said Montana first, always. Those types of things, I think, guide a vision, and having a principle that really is setting the tone, expectations, vision for the organization filters down in so many different ways. Same thing with Sarah Calhoun. She is this innovative entrepreneur, inspirer. So she has all that vision. She just needs support structure and backup behind her. And so when Max went off to China, that was heartbreaking. He's almost like a father figure to so many of us as staff, and our whole former Baucus staff really do feel like a family. We've had a couple of reunions the past few years, and we all love each other because you go through so much in those roles together, and you really solidify those bonds because you're always under a lot of scrutiny and wanting to make sure you're doing the right thing and promoting Montana and Montana values. It was hard to lose Max. And so that's sort of my brain thinking, what do I really want to do if Max isn't around anymore? What's the next step for me? And I dedicated a year of my life to supporting John Walsh because I really believed in him as a human being. I thought that his born and raised in Butte, I think first in his family, go to college, went into the National Guard. Suddenly 9/11 happens. He has to be deployed overseas, becomes the head of the National Guard in Montana. Just an incredible man with an incredible heart and hit head on his shoulders in the right way. Congress is so full of folks that are really out of touch with the things that matter to everyday Montanans. So I really liked that piece of him as well. But since we couldn't get him over that hump, I had been thinking what's next? And I felt very fortunate that I had about 20 staff under me as I was Senator Walsh's Montana chief of staff. And I wanted to make sure that all of them got to their next position. If they wanted to retire, great. But if they wanted to get another position in the state of Montana, I wanted to make sure that they were set up. So it felt lucky that I had that opportunity to focus on them and hear their story and hear their desires and help to matchmake them and network them in with the right folks. I think it helped me to think through things about what really mattered to me and making sure that my next steps were going to be just as meaningful as the work I had done in the Senate.
Wow. Yeah. So then at that point, with all that experience and wanting to make an impact and wanting to be a supportive, people have these visions of, I want to make this happen. And it seems like a killer idea, killer concept, but oftentimes they just need that support system to come in. You had all this experience, all this ability. I'm sure you're a great listener. Would you consider yourself a great listener?
I want to think I'm a great listener, but sometimes I feel like my mind is thinking as I'm hearing things.
Oh, I think I can only envision of all the things that you've had to deal with: fielding calls, understanding legislative policy, listening to the rhetoric, also being, I hear you. You had to listen and then take that information in and then compartmentalize it in a way to make it make sense to you and to make it make sense to the organization moving forward. Somebody like Sarah Calhoun, who's got this great concept and idea and vision, may be needing somebody like you that can come in and structurally create it. So you had that experience. And then being in Montana, I'm sure you saw people that needed somebody like you. So then, was that when you decided to create Bird Dog Strategies, and why the title? That's what I want to know.
Great. Yes. So following the sort of conclusion of my Senate career, I thought deeply about what was next, who I wanted to be working for, what I wanted to be spending my time on. Sarah Calhoun from Red Ants Pants actually approached me directly to say, if you're interested in starting a consulting company, I'll be your first client.
Right.
And so we just went with it, and we did a great strategic planning and mission writing session together that resulted in a beautiful mission statement for the Pants Company 10 years in, which is fun. And
hold on, I want to back up. You were instrumental in creating the mission statement for Red Ants Pants.
yeah, Sarah, where were we? She had a rental house in Livingston or something like that, and we did a mission statement writing session there, just the two of us together. But it was a great way to understand the brand more and get to know Sarah more deeply. I had known her over the years because Mark County was one of the counties I spent a lot of time in. My sister was actually in one of the original Red Ants Pants commercials where someone has to take off their pants to tow a boy's truck out of the ditch with the pants. Cool. Had some fun history with her, and just found my other sister in Sarah and got to build this whole new empire together. And exactly like you're saying, work on those workflows and structures to support the bigger vision that she had. I think I was so fortunate to just walk into this U.S. Senate office that was 40 years in the making. And so all the processes and workflows and databases, I learned so much about that institutional structure that I've been able to carry forward to other clients. And I'm certainly a blue data type mindset. Structure and process is a big way of how I understand the world. And I think it can help to create staff structures that support larger events and organizations.
What a gift. Truly. Especially with people that are struggling to try to figure out why it is they might be having these setbacks. And then you can come in and basically hack and see, okay, this is where we need to fill in some of those holes to make it become whole. Pretty cool.
Yeah, and with Sarah, it's so fun too, because after working for a decade in public service, where by design, things are supposed to take a long time. So a piece of legislation, if it finally crosses the finish line 10 years later, that's a big victory.
Yeah.
Versus in private business, Sarah and I would just have a conversation, make some decisions, and I'd be doing the thing the next day and making the changes. So that was a really fun change and dichotomy. That was really exciting for me at the time to understand a little bit more about the private sector side.
Yes. Yes. And I would assume there's a lot of little things that you didn't click into because you weren't working in that industry or that. Yeah. That's really fascinating. Now, when you started working for her, was she just starting out?
No, so she founded the Pants Company in 2006, and I would have been coming to her in 2015. So she was almost 10 years into the Pants Company at that point, and she had founded the music festival in 2011.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay, so 2011 is when the music festival came around. What made her decide to do a music festival? And I can ask her. I know we're going to have a conversation, and I'm so interested in all this. I think this is fascinating. You go from pants to music. Right?
So the way she describes it is the pants were working. She didn't have pants that fit. She made pants that fit. That was exciting, but she's a serial entrepreneur that always has the next big thing on her mind. Yeah. She was really noticing some disconnect just in society in general, and what better way of bringing people together than the power of music. So that was the inspiration of the Red Ants Pants Foundation, of which the music festival is the main fundraiser.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And to be able to be a part of that and to help with the mission on that, I think is pretty cool. It's part of history, which has made such an impact on that community and even the surrounding communities, which I think is pretty remarkable for what you all are doing.
Yeah, and just having an example of a rural town doing something really special. There's been so many great music festivals that have sprouted up in other small towns, and Sarah's done a lot of mentoring of the people that are running those. And It's always fun to see an idea take off, and people have so much pride in the work that they're doing and supporting their community. All of these things are such whole community efforts where our local brewer is also the football coach who gets the whole football team out to fill up the gopher holes. And there's just a million stories like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that is so cool. I think it's wonderful. Now I want to ask you, what's the reason for the name of your company, Bird Dog Strategies?
Yeah. So actually my dad and I think we were driving up to Canada for a hunt around the time that Senator Walsh's term was coming to an end, and I was needing to figure out what my next step was. And it just bird dogging. That's what I do. I don't know that I'll know the answer in the moment, but I'm going to figure it out and do a lot of research to make sure I bring forward a really good solution for the client.
That's cool. I always like to learn why people name their companies. So I think that's a cool way of thinking. And you are a hunter, you're a waterfowl hunter, and you can't just bring your dog out there. You do have to like have some plan of attack, but oftentimes they do go awry. Yeah, I like how that all kind of ties into your life experiences and what you love to do, your passion, which,
Yeah.
and then I want to go into tell the listeners a little bit about what your company offers and why it's unique.
Yep. So in founding Bird Dog Strategies, what I really saw, especially with small businesses and even with larger businesses, because my second client was Bozeman Health, which is the hospital system down here in Southwest Montana, there are just some capacity gaps where people have needs to fill. And especially in small businesses, you got one or two people trying to do everything. And so if you have somebody that can really focus on web design or e-commerce platform design, or making sure that your database systems are all working correctly, or even for the hospital at that time when I started with them in 2015, they had an executive that oversaw business development and communications, and they had one staff member that was in the communications realm. And so for what is now almost a 3,000 employee entity, they built up their communications team significantly, but I was a good fill-in to do both sort of community relations where I could help with land stewardship, relationships between a rancher, farmer, neighbors, folks that are using the trails on that hospital's property, but then also just all around communications expertise to support preparation for media, interviews, to support executives and giving presentations to the community, to making sure that the right folks are getting the messages that the health system needs to share. So I really saw an opportunity to use my skills to fill in gaps for clients that need just like a little bit of support here and there, and being really flexible and able to grow with the need in the right direction for them.
Yeah, that's a highly needed business and service offering. You're juggling many hats. Is there one skill set that you like doing more than others? I hate to ask you that, but I want to know.
Yeah, and that's the whole part of my life right now where
Yeah.
I'm really focused on intention instead of intensity. Especially working in Congress, I was never to the office later than about 7:30 a.m. and I never left before 7:30 p.m. So they were super long days. And then
Yeah.
when Max was in the state, when I was working in the state for him, you're a 24/7 environment, especially if you're traveling with the senator, late nights, early mornings, on the go all the time. You have your BlackBerry, getting your messages, no matter what hour of the day is. And I just felt like my life was passing me by really quickly. And I had also put a lot of focus on my work because I was really unhappy in my personal relationship. And so as I got out of that relationship and as I had a little bit more capacity and realized that I had this whole life to actually live, it's been really fun to take a step back and really say, do I really want to be an event planner? Is that what's really filling me up anymore? It isn't. Event planning is incredibly demanding on your time. And no matter if it's a small event or a big event, it just takes a lot of hours to put all the pieces and parts together. So I've been moving away from that part of my practice and focusing more on like where I can really add value with policy analysis, community relations, my network, understanding larger trends, and then also have an opportunity to work on some new skills because, of course, what is a generalist to do but add more things to their portfolios?
Right.
Yeah, working on
Of course.
driving a boat, trailer backing, getting better at waterfowl guiding, doing a lot of business management for our Four Flyways Outfitters, our hunting company up in Alaska. So it's been fun to take a step back instead of just be on that wheel running as fast as I can and say, what do I really want to do with my time? What's filling me up? What am I okay with still doing? Even if it isn't being out there with a gun, and where can I really add value for clients instead of just do things that a lot of other people could do, but maybe I'm not the perfect fit for anymore.
I like the fact that you're innovative, right? You take this, we're all doers, right? I think women in general are a lot of doing. And right. So if we have a passion, we figure out a way to do it. Well, maybe I can turn this into some sort of a business opportunity. But I also think it's fulfilling. It's fulfillment. You learned all these skill sets. You're great in this aspect, event planning, coordinating, communicating, all these aspects, because you've had this amazing breadth of life experiences and work. And now you're like, I don't want to grind. I want to be doing what I love to do, but maybe a little bit of money can be made from it, which I think is fascinating because in our previous conversation, I know you talked about just traveling up into Alaska and how that lit you up. Even watching you talk about it was inspiring to see that you found something that's soul connective. There's something about that when you're in that element, when you're in the wild and you're not strapped down by all the things that you have to do and your brain's always on. I'm sure it's constantly always on. When you're in those elements, does it just stop for you? Does things slow down?
Yeah, you've hit it on the head. So I think I first experienced it hunting with my dad. So we did a lot of upland hunting, especially in Montana, where you're just walking for miles and miles with your dog in grasslands of Montana. And I was finding myself be really present. And certainly in my regular life, in my business life, I'm constantly like thinking about the next worry, rehashing something I did wrong, whatever it is. It's a hamster wheel in there. And so there's something about being outside, and especially as a waterfowl guide, you have to be focused on things that actually matter, like safety and the wind and the tides, and is there a bear behind me? And so it's really fun to indulge in the present moment.
Yeah.
That's something that's very new for me, and it almost feels like a revelation that I've discovered that this is a thing in life, and so I'm going to put a lot of time and effort into trying to make that be more of my life.
But it feels a little bit more receiving.
Yep.
You've got this beautiful opportunity to be with these. I'm sure you're not out there just shooting your gun. I'm from a bird hunting family, so I understand. There's a lot of times of just sitting and soul reflecting and then taking it in and watching the flights of these beautiful birds that are free, a sense of freedom. And I'm sure with your brain, it's a moment of just being and breathing and receiving and just allowance, because I'm sure a lot of what you've had to endure in your life, there's been allowance and grace, but there hasn't been, because you've always probably had to be on. You've always had to be at your best. And then when that lasts for way too long, we do forget about how to just be. And this is such a beautiful space for you to be in your life and have this opportunity to pivot. And I think I wish more women had this earlier on in life.
Yeah.
Don't you think? Because we spend a lot of our time grinding and doing, and we don't do a lot of just allowing and receiving. And I think that's just such a blessing and a gift that we're supposed to be given in life.
And it's the funniest thing too, where it's like, even if I don't think my mind is turning, like I will figure stuff out in that field. Yeah. Even in yoga, like I'll have some big epiphany where I'm like, oh, that's how that works. It's like your brain is still going, but it's like there's nothing as good as like the calm of present moment for your brain to actually do the work it needs to do to figure out the big stuff. I do feel lucky that I've had weeks at a time when I was younger where I had those opportunities to really figure out big questions or solve for big problems because of a hunting weekend or whatever that looked like. As I get older, I am finding that my brain really enjoys that time and benefits a lot from it. And I think I'm going to be able to give back more to my clients if I have a little bit more of that space.
Yeah. I want to hear, what's your ideal client? Who do you want? What would be an ideal client for 4 flyways? Which, by the way, I also want to know why it's titled 4 flyways.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So 4 Flyways Outfitters, we're located in Cold Bay, Alaska. And so flyways are essentially like these migratory tracks that birds take. And there's 4 of them in North America, and many of them combine up where we are because we're in a wetlands of international importance at Eisenbeck National Wildlife Refuge. And so it's just a fun nod to the reality of the unique nature and migratory patterns of waterfowl.
It's so cool. Like, I wish you were doing like talks, and my thought is like, oh, I'd love for her to just talk about what she knows about the area and how beautiful and unique it is and what it's like for all these wetland animals to come together in that area. I don't think people understand that and know what an amazing opportunity it would be for you to take somebody there to witness it.
Yeah. I am obsessed. It's like I'm learning something new every day. There's this great app called iNaturalist that's really focused on citizen science. So I'm using that tool constantly to learn more about the species that I've seen. There's like over 70 different species of seaweed in one of the lagoons, for example. So I just got a new seaweed identification book, but I'm a dryland kid. I born and raised in Montana. So this
Right.
wet marine environment is very exciting for me and full of mysteries. I just feel like a kid every single day. I'm like running across the tundra, picking berries, finding weird little mosses and just trying to figure it all out. But yeah, anybody who likes to duck hunt or is a waterfowler and would enjoy coming down with us up in Cold Bay, Alaska. Again, it's Eisenbeck National Wildlife Refuge is this 400,000 acre wetland wilderness complex that is primarily consisting of an enormous lagoon that's tidal and full of eelgrass, which is a really specific type of marine plant that Pacific black brants specifically eat, makes them taste delicious. The pintails eat the eelgrass seeds. Some of it's waterfowl you'll ever eat in your life. And then they have this incredible migration journey down to the other eelgrass beds near Mexico.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating stuff. And I think sometimes I'm hoping that somebody like you that's been out in the field that understands and takes the time to learn, I hope that information keeps trickling down to the next generation because you get appreciation for it all. And why animals, obviously, when you hunt them and eat them, pheasant is another one. They taste delicious, but no one really knows why they taste delicious. In the Midwest, they taste delicious because they're always gnawing on corn or out in the cornfields. So we're up in those areas. I might be wrong with that, but my husband hunts pheasants and he always brings them home and I end up having to cook them but they're delicious. And you don't understand why they're so delicious. It's because of the environment.
Yeah. It's so fun. So Jeff Wosley, my partner, is the owner of Four Flyways Outfitters, and he is a biologist by training. And so in addition to understanding a lot about bird behaviors, he also understands a lot about their plumage because there's a lot of interbreeding and crossbreeding between the different flyways up there. So you see a lot of unique species you don't see other places. And a lot of them are identified by a couple different feathers and different markings. And so it opens up a whole new part of the experience. And I think the most rewarding thing is not every client gets it. Some clients just really want to shoot a bunch of birds and a vacation. Some of them get there and they're like, wow, this is a really special place. And you can see them figure it out. And one of my favorite clients was a young man from the East Coast. I think he was from North Carolina, where he had just never seen a natural tidal area before. So he was just, the way that the lagoon works is there's these channels that the water has burrowed through the eelgrass over the years, and those are the only navigable parts, especially at different tidal depths for the boats. And he was just like, did somebody dredge these? Like, he couldn't understand that it was a natural ecosystem untouched by humans to the large extent. And so it's just so fun to think about folks who've never been in the majesty of wilderness getting to experience it. It's one of the most rewarding things.
And I just want to point out what's unique about your outfitter is that you do have somebody there that can explain those things and actually has the educational resources and understanding and knowledge to be able to provide that. That's a gift. That's an extra level of experience and expertise.
Yeah, and it's a real differentiator in the market for us as well. There's so many folks that are just like about piles and bands, and I think what we offer, we're in a really unique place, and we're offering something that's a little bit more than that for the curious waterfowler.
I love it. I think you're doing amazing. I'm so impressed by you. But I do want you to give one little piece of advice to women. If they are in an industry, they're maybe not necessarily burn out, but they're like, I'm missing something in my life. What, for somebody like you, and you just shared your story about taking that little bit of leap of faith and going, this is filling my soul. What advice would you give that person listening if they're there, if they were there where you once were?
I think like the imposter syndrome has been a thing that's held me back a lot. And I think I see it in a lot of other women where it's, you already have all of these skills. Sure, maybe you didn't have the title press secretary, but you know a ton about social media and you know a lot about communications, and you can really help a lot of folks who don't have any of those skills at all. So I think don't undersell yourself and believe in the skills that you have and pitch proudly. There's so many women that undersell what they're offering, and any other person in that position would oversell the same skill set. So have a lot of confidence there, and then just listen to your gut. ultimately that's never led me wrong. And it's been scary. Like, I've been really scared to take these big leaps from like a public sector job where I got a paycheck every 2 weeks and I had health insurance and I had a retirement plan to just see if I could create my own business. That was terrifying. I didn't know how I was going to pay the bills, and I was fortunate that it all came together and worked really hard and worked a lot more hours than I got paid for. But I think I've built something that has a lot of value now that I'm able to structure more soundly financially.
Wow. Yes. I love that. I love that. We're down to our last 3 questions. I'm so sorry. I could talk to you for hours. I think you don't realize it, but just all that you've done, it's pretty inspiring. And to know that you had this belief in yourself, and maybe oftentimes you didn't. We all have that. It's very normal. But it seems that you were like, I'm just going to figure it out. And I feel like that's a lot of what Montanans do. We're like, we're going to do it. I'm going to make it happen. I'll figure it out. And it's going to be okay. And I think you've exhibited some of those pieces, but you've been successful. You're like, it's going to not just be okay, but it's going to be a hit. It's going to be successful. So kudos to you. I really enjoyed our conversations. Very inspiring. Okay, I want to get to our last 3 questions. Here's my first one. When future generations look back on your role in Montana's history, what do you hope they understand about why you did what you did first? And how do you see the work you're doing now shaping the lives of women, men, decades from now?
I think number one is like Montana's given me a lot. And so I feel like I have a lot to give back to Montana. I feel like we had been discussing earlier, that incredible K-12 public education system that really prepared me for life and instilled in me a lot of basic skill sets that I've been able to use for the rest of my career. And then the public service side of it, where it's like the state has given me so much and given me so many fun opportunities with the public lands and all the wilderness and recreation and true life value in addition to skill set building value. And so wanting that, I would hope folks see that I'm trying to give back to the state and make connections that are valuable and further the economy and the prospects for other workers in the region. Yeah.
I love it. I think you nailed it. You're part of history already. All the things that you've done and looking at working with Sarah and now building this new adventure company, you're giving people memories for they're going to bring their kids with them, maybe a mother-daughter hunt or a father-son hunt. Wow, look at the impact. We often don't think about that. It's like just the littlest things like that just make such a generational impact, and you're doing it. That's really cool. Thank you so much. Okay, I've got a fun one. You've juggled high-level strategy, outdoor adventure, and you have a serious love for waterfowl. If you could plan the ultimate flyway summit, who's invited? A flock of ducks, a room full of policymakers, or your closest hunting crew? And then what's on the agenda?
So hard. I want everybody invited. I love it when all of my worlds combine. I have a lot of different worlds and a lot of amazing people in those different parts of the world. But I go to a lot of conferences, but I love economic development conferences and economic forecasts and outlooks. So it would have to have a lot of components there. And then the opportunity to share and help people network and connect to empower new innovation. I think making those connections to get people to the next level or just get more product opportunities out there is really fun. Some sort of blend of economic forecasting, like insights into consumer behavior, that'd be a big part of it. And then, of course, you have to take a few days off and go either pheasant hunting or go snow goose hunting and really get to know each other out in the field.
I love it. That's great. I love it. That's a great answer. All right. My last question, which is my signature question for the podcast. We believe in amplifying the voices of remarkable women. If you could pass the mic to a Montana woman to share her story on the IWD406 podcast, who would she be and why?
So it would definitely have to be Kathy Weber. So Kathy's been by my side since about 2010 and has become one of my most dear peers and mentors. Not only do I have a ton of respect for her professional approach, but she's also one of the most impactfully caring and compassionate people I've ever known. Around the same time that I was starting Bird Dog Strategies, she was also with Senator Baucus and then helped out our friend John Lewis with his run to Congress. So when I was starting Bird Dog Strategies, she founded Star Hitch Strategies, which is a public relations and communication strategy firm dedicated to helping ethical businesses and individuals make more uplifting connections with the people they serve. So she's a former TV anchor, so she has expertise on both sides of the camera. She has a deep bench of media relations expertise and a true talent for storytelling. And so just as I'm finding the heart of my work in the outdoors, Kathy has her own very notable passion project called the Rotuma Project. Rotuma is an island in the South Pacific and the home of Kathy's mother. And the Rotuma Project is working to preserve Rotuman cultural heritage, wisdom, language, and geographic and ecological highlights of the island nation. So Kathy has some incredible stories to tell, and she really knows how to tell them too. So it'll be quite the interview if you get to have a chance to talk to her.
Oh, I'm following her.
Oh,
I
good.
love what she's doing. Wasn't she just there not too long ago? Yeah, and I love the fact that I did not know this, but basically the language is almost obsolete. Some of the kids do not know it, and she's doing a lot of work to really preserve not only the culture, but the language, which I thought was quite fascinating. She's amazing.
Yeah, she's doing it. She's doing the big thing.
She is doing the big thing, and I'm so thankful that you're passing the mic to her. I cannot wait to have a conversation with her. All right. Thank you so much. I have really enjoyed. I'm hoping that at some point I can get to Bozeman, in the Bozeman area, and actually meet you in person. It'd be an honor.
That. Yes.
Yes.
You can go over to my house and see all our great taxidermy. You'll love it.
Oh, if you saw my house, we have some of that in our house as well. So you're in good company with me. All right. Thank you so much.
A special thank you to our podcast guest. You can find all of her links in the description of this episode. If you like what you heard, please hit subscribe. You will be notified of future podcast guests. Follow us on our social media platforms and stay tuned for our next podcast chat with an amazing Montana woman.